Welcome to Sci-Fi Quantum Archives. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore. Nobody flagged it at first. Too small. A minor gap in parcel data on a stretch of rural land nobody cared about. Just a few acres outside Dodge County, Wisconsin. Mostly prairie, some broken fencing, 2 survey markers lost to wind. I thought it was an input error. Those happen. Coordinates slip, time zones confuse. Nothing unusual. But something stayed with me about the notation. A paragraph added in longhand, in faded blue ink, squashed in the margin. Interior location lacks orientation. No ingress identified. Interior dimensions, 10 by 12. Carpet orange. Door locked from neither side. There was no signature. Just a date. October 1971. The original scans came from a box misfiled under soil consistency reports. I wasn't even supposed to be reading them. I was digitizing topographical overlays for a private acquisition group that specialized in preemptive land banking, buying out territories years before cities planned outward. Clean work. Isolated. No colleagues. I liked it that way. A week later, working through Kansas records, a second mention appeared. Nearly word for word. This one from 1986. Same description. Same room. 10 by 12. Orange carpet. 1 door, no knob. Again, no external references. No building mark. No GPS string. Just, interior observe. No return possible. At that point, I started tagging them. Whenever one turned up, I added it to a separate map layer. By the end of the month, there were 7. Oregon, Manitoba, Illinois, Maine, Sardinia, Yokohama, Tasmania. Different languages. Different decades. All describing the same dimensions. Identical sensory note. Orange carpet. Faint hum. Dry air like metal filings or old heaters. Always just a few lines, often in the margins, like someone didn't want to commit too much detail. Like the act of writing it down meant something they couldn't take back. None of the entries included coordinate. Not one. Not even relative placement. Just that phrase repeated in slight variations. No ingress identified. No external match. Location cannot be verified. And once, just once, typed in a Soviet geological record from 1974, this room has no place in the world. Still, I told myself these were ghost entries. Copying errors. Surveyors under strain. Hallucinations, maybe. You'd be surprised how often people under long hours in silence start imagining interiors. The mind wants corners, doors, walls, even if nothing's there. Especially if nothing's there. But then I found one from 2003. Logged by my own firm. It had a voice note attached, stored on minicassette. I played it through an old recorder I kept around for playback compatibility. The voice wasn't listed. No metadata. No tag. But I knew it. Every inflection. Every pause. It was me. Maybe 6 or 7 years old. Younger than I had any right to be on that tape. Younger than I ever remember being around those tools or documents. I described the room like someone talking in their sleep. Door without a handle. The walls are too far but still close. I don't like the hum, it makes my teeth hurt. My voice trembled on one sentence. You've been here too. You just forgot. That's when I stopped calling it an error. The descriptions never drifted. Not once. 10 by 12. Burnt orange carpet. Always that phrase, not red, not rust, not amber. Burnt orange. As if they were reading from the same page. The door always flat, always closed, always lacking any knob or latch. Nothing ever said locked, just closed. The air metallic. Dry. Sometimes with a faint scent of mildew, like old tile hidden under newer floors. And always the hum. That word, over and over. A hum in the walls, behind the walls, under the floor. Some said it pulsed, others said it stayed level. But nobody described silence. No one ever named the place. No cross street. No elevation marker. No topography. Just entries dropped into logs as if the room didn't need a context to be real. Only one described the outside, and even that account ended with the sentence, "Whatever was beyond the threshold wasn't mine." I started pulling metadata. I wanted a glitch. Something to fall apart on closer look. Date formats mismatched, timestamps impossible, sample rates corrupted. Anything. But it all held. GPS logs were either scrubbed or blank. Not corrupted, blank. Zeroed out. The audio files held consistent hertz rates, consistent encoding, correct compression. No stutter, no drift. Everything checked out. Except the content. One woman, a hydrologist working in Saskatchewan, wrote her report in pencil. The handwriting matched her personnel file. She'd logged the room during a snow survey in 1992. Her description went deeper than most. She wrote about the way the carpet crushed differently beneath each foot, how her balance shifted near the left corner, like her inner ear gave up trying to orient itself. She drew it too. A top-down sketch. Just 4 lines and one small rectangle for the door. That was it. But it matched the sketch I'd drawn weeks before without realizing it. A field linguist in New Zealand submitted her observation in a phonetic transcription. She was mapping indigenous dialects when she claimed to have entered a structure without placement. Her description mentioned nothing visual, just tactile impressions. She wrote that the walls felt indifferent. That phrase stuck with me, walls that didn't notice her. Each person described it as a physical place, not a dream, not a metaphor, not symbolic. A room you could stand in, breathe in, touch, leave footprints. One man had recorded audio during his time inside. Just 6 minutes. All low hum, faint mechanical whine, no movement, no voice. At minute 5, something shifts, just slightly. A brief pressure in the sound floor. Like weight redistributed. No explanation. No motion captured. But something in me tightened when I heard it. Like a memory I didn't own was waking up behind my eyes. I ran handwriting analysis. Compared slants, pressure, ink degradation, fiber absorption rate. Nothing forged. The samples came from different continents, written in different decades, by people who'd never crossed paths. And still the words lined up. Orange carpet. Door with no handle. 10 by 12. A hum from the walls. Some accounts added small variations. One said the room had no corners, just softened angles that refused to meet. Another mentioned a patch of ceiling that appeared darker, like something above it leaned too close. But the core remained. Identical. I tried recreating it once. Measured out the space in my apartment. Found carpet at a surplus warehouse that matched the color as close as memory allowed. No matter what I did, the light stayed wrong. The shadows wouldn't behave. The air felt too thick or too flat. It didn't feel wrong, it felt irrelevant. Like trying to paint breath. I stood in that square and felt nothing. No hum. No weight. No pull. But something stayed with me every night after that. Not fear. Not confusion. Something quieter. A kind of recognition with no event behind it. A familiar shape in a hallway you've never walked. A floor plan you've never lived in but already know how to navigate blind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing. A room I'd been inside. A room that left no trace. A room I had never found. The phrase showed up for the first time in a weather log from Nebraska, winter of 1983. Scanned into the margin beside a wind chill chart and a soil frost index, written in block capitals. No context. No signature. No accompanying notes. Just 6 words, slanted to the right as if the hand had lost confidence halfway through. You've been here too. You just forgot. At first, I read it as an afterthought. A personal footnote, maybe. Someone playing with memory. Field teams worked long days. Isolation messes with judgment. People write things down to feel less alone. But 2 days later, reviewing a Chilean forestry report from 1991, I found it again. Same wording. Different hand. Lowercase. No punctuation. The room had been described in the usual way. Carpet, one door, a sound from inside the walls, and then the final line. You've been here too, you just forgot. It kept happening. A floodplain report from southern India, 1979. A British naval survey, 1954. A coastal erosion record from Louisiana, 2006. Same sentence. Different voices, different formats, different professions. Some handwritten. Some typed. One etched in the corner of a thermal printout with a needlepoint pen. At some point, I stopped cataloging the reports. They stopped feeling separate. The phrasing felt personal, like something addressed to me directly. I started looking for it in places I hadn't checked yet. Backups, offsite archives, corrupt tapes, mislabeled hard drives. That's when I found the tape. No folder, no index, just a label with 4 digits. 1196. I assumed it was a misdated survey. Maybe November. Maybe an internal code. I ran it through a portable reader. Nothing visual, just audio. A child's voice, recorded in short bursts. No clear narration, more like fragments. The quality wasn't degraded. It was pristine. No tape hiss, no warble. The sound hit clean and cold. The first words described a carpet. Not red, not orange, just, the floor is that color that makes your stomach feel wrong. The child paused after every few words. Not because he was thinking, but as if he wasn't alone. Like he was waiting to be allowed to speak again. Then came a sentence I remembered reading from the Saskatchewan hydrologist, almost word for word. The door doesn't want me to open it, but it doesn't say no. I played it 3 times before I let the recognition settle. The inflection. The slight rasp after hard consonant. The way the vowels drew out at the end of questions, even if no question was asked. It wasn't similar. It was exact. It was me. That tape existed in 1996. I was born in 1998. No older sibling. No relative with a matching cadence. No voice mimicry on file. I compared it to my earliest recorded audio. There was no difference. Same pitch, same speech irregularities, same breath patterns. I tried convincing myself it was coincidence. A fluke. An archival mislabel. Maybe someone imitating me, unknowingly. That rational thread snapped when the child spoke the phrase. Clearer than the rest. No tremble. No pause. You've been here too. You just forgot. I sat with it for hours. The air changed. Furniture no longer held shape the same way. Corners felt too far apart. Time thickened. Not slower. Not still. Just wrong. The room felt smaller without shrinking. I stopped playing the tape. Not because it scared me. Because it felt like memory. Not someone else's. Mine. Just misplaced. Not lost. Buried. Every part of me knew what was behind that door. I just couldn't say it out loud. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because if I said it, I might remember what it did to me. A contact at a records bureau in Rijeka forwarded a scanned maintenance card. The handwriting was angular, tight, written in Croatian. Translated loosely, it read, "Room with no air vent. Smell of iron filings. Left ear pressure persists after exit." The signature belonged to a mechanic who died in 2004. I traced his son through a state business license renewal filed under auto repairs. He remembered his father speaking once, only once, about a strange place that didn't have an outside. The son offered his father's old notebooks. Grease-stained. Smelled of solvent. One sketch near the back matched the other's I'd archived. Same layout. Same wall ratio. Same absence of context. But one note stood out in the corner of the page, written small, barely legible. Gravity wrong by back wall. Feels like stepping into a picture. I followed a reference number buried in a 1980s social work case file. That led to a man serving life without parole in southern Illinois. Permission for correspondence took weeks. He wrote back fast. No greeting, no pleasantries, just one paragraph describing a room. No handle. Carpet like dry skin. Sound without source. He remembered the smell first. Not metallic, he said, more like an overheated wire just before it fails. I asked how he got there. He didn't answer. Sent a second letter, this time with a drawing. It matched the mechanics. The last came by accident. A woman listed as a school nurse in rural Vermont had submitted a personal report to an agricultural zoning board in 1972, unrelated to her job. It had been misfiled under irrigation concerns. I found it while scanning municipal paperwork for unrelated structures. She described entering the room without doors, only thresholds. That word stuck, thresholds. Not walls, not entries. Thresholds. As if the act of entering had been automatic. As if refusal hadn't been an option. I tracked her through a county library's historical volunteer list. She was alive. Quiet. Mid-80s. Sharp voice. When I mentioned the room, she paused just once. Asked what color the carpet had been. I told her. She didn't ask how I knew. I visited. She kept her house cold. Clean but unbalanced, as if the furniture refused to agree on where to settle. She served weak tea and held her teacup without drinking. When I laid the sketches out in front of her, mine, the mechanics, the prisoners, she didn't blink. Said nothing for 3 minutes. Only watched. When she finally spoke, her voice went flat. I didn't draw mine, she said. I saw it already drawn. That was the part one couldn't stand. Each person described the same shift in pressure. Near one wall, the body felt lighter in parts and heavier in others, like it was being sorted by density. One said the ceiling pulsed, not visually, but physically, like breathing behind plaster. One claimed the hum stopped for 3 seconds before she left. Not silence, absence. The kind that leaves your blood unsure of what to do. No one could explain how they got inside. No memory of approach. No door. No trigger. Just awareness, already mid-moment, already too late to frame it. The transitions weren't like dreams. They lacked that blur. These were slices. Sharp-edged. Inserted cleanly into memory as if they'd always been there. I tested their drawings. Measured distances, line weight, perspective. No variation. Not a single error between them. Not a fraction of deviation. As if each were pulled from the same blueprint, but no one had seen anyone else's. These weren't copies. They were recollections. All of them thought they were alone in the memory. All of them believed it had only happened to them. Until they saw the others. And even then, none of them looked relieved. The lines began to match too perfectly. Measured in millimeters, the distances between walls, the width of the door frame, the depth of the floor panels, they aligned. Not approximate. Not similar. Exact. Dozens of sketches laid out across my apartment floor, pinned to corkboard, taped to glass. The overlays clicked into place like they'd been made by the same hand across 50 years of strangers. It didn't matter how the paper aged or how the ink bled. The room remained unchanged. I stopped accepting new assignments, ignored calls from the firm, let deadlines pass without answer. Money ran low, but I didn't feel it. Nothing in the outside world pressed hard enough to distract me. I started waking with ink on my arms. Shapes I hadn't drawn consciously. Floor plans on my palms. Corner markings on the undersides of receipt. Napkins folded with dimensions etched into the crease lines. Once I caught myself sketching in condensation on the bathroom mirror before I'd even turned the light on. Sleep shortened. Not from restlessness, just irrelevance. I didn't want to close my eyes. Not out of fear. There was no threat. Only clarity. When the dark came, the proportions returned in full. The door stood where it always had, just out of reach. Never open. Never gone. Not threatening. Just present. People began to notice. One friend stopped replying after I left a voice message, explaining the weight distribution near the corner of the room. Not emotional weight. Physical. A measurable tug. As if something beneath the floor was adjusting gravity in ways not meant for observation. I didn't blame him. The words didn't sound normal, not even to me. But I couldn't find other ones. Language had started to thin out around the room. It didn't belong in grammar. My partner packed without anger. Not even frustration. Just a quiet folding of clothes and a line I still remember without force. I can't compete with something that doesn't exist in this world. There wasn't a goodbye. Just the sound of the door clicking shut at a pace slower than necessary. I didn't go to the window. I don't know if I was meant to. Work emails piled up. Deadlines removed themselves. The inbox dried out. Notifications stopped. I let the laptop die and didn't charge it. The screen held no maps that mattered anymore. Every geography I'd ever studied had betrayed me. Terrain only made sense with logic behind it. But this room had no placement, no origin, no trajectory. It simply was. The walls of my apartment changed. Not visibly, not structurally, but in presence. The corners leaned wrong. My own bedroom felt like an imitation of a space I couldn't return to but never truly left. I marked up the drywall with chalk, measuring 10 feet from one point, 12 from another, finding ways to recreate the ratio. The smell never came back, nor the hum, but the memory saturated everything. Not memory like nostalgia. Memory like residue. I didn't talk to anyone unless necessary. Words stopped working outside the context of the room. Conversations flattened. Language was an inconvenience. I kept a stack of note cards beside the mattress. Each one had a line or angle I needed to remember. Every few hours, I rearranged them, checking alignment, testing scale, trying to find the variable I'd missed. Nothing changed. The layout never shifted. The room didn't evolve. It didn't answer. It didn't react. It didn't hide. It simply insisted. Quietly. Persistently. Like a number that exists before counting begins. I no longer needed proof. The sketches proved nothing. The testimonies meant nothing. My own memories had ceased to matter. The room had moved past explanation. It had become the only map that still made sense. Certain places started pulling at me. Not curiosity. Not intuition. More like a tug you can't explain in your body, a feeling just beneath the ribs, like breath going in the wrong direction. No name for it. No logic to it. Only direction. The first one was an overgrown lot on the edge of a town I'd never lived in. Cracked pavement underneath weeds that had split their way through decades of forgetfulness. No fence. No signs. Just space that didn't feel right. Not dangerous. Not decayed. Just misplaced. I stood there too long. Cars passed behind me, none slowing. My feet wouldn't shift. Every part of me expected a door that wasn't visible. Every corner of my sight pulled inward, toward something that didn't announce itself. After that, I started going farther. Rail lines erased from modern maps, still faintly visible on old plats. Grainy satellite views showed rusted tracks veering into gullies or up toward forest that no longer remembered having trains. Each place came to me as a shape first. Not a memory, not even a dream. More like a suggestion. The kind of image that shows up behind closed eyes before sleep. Not distinct, just persuasive. One led me to a decommissioned substation outside Joliet. Records had it sealed in the 70s. But the date scratched into the rusted frame read 1955. Accessing the interior took effort. Padlocks long fused. Panels warped by heat or time. The door gave after an hour of silence. I didn't bring tools. Just hands. Skin tore on the metal. Didn't matter. Inside, the dust sat thick enough to mute steps. Equipment lined the walls. Obsolete dials, broken gauges, cables cut short like veins too tired to feed. Most of it had collapsed inward, but one cabinet stood untouched. No dust on the handle. No markings. When opened, it revealed shelves of outdated field reports. Faded type. Some illegible. Most unreadable. But one page had been sealed in plastic. The ink still sharp. I didn't need to translate it. Every part of it made sense before I finished the first line. Service door inside room has no physical latch. Do not disturb walls. Report any surface distortions to site command. Avoid prolonged interior presence. Keep track of time externally. There was no address on the file. No project number. Just a date, 1957. The signature at the bottom was smudged, almost intentional. But the floor plan attached left no doubt. 10 by 12. One door. No windows. Interior markings labeled. Incongruent curvature, perceptual interference, ambient hum non-mechanical in origin. I stayed in that substation until dark. Not to explore. Not to search. Just to listen. Somewhere in that silence, a memory began forming. Not clear, not exact. Just familiar. Not like something I'd experienced. More like something that had experienced me. Leaving felt like walking away from a name I'd almost remembered. From that point on, every place I visited followed the same rhythm. An abandoned rail corridor outside St. Louis where birds refused to land. A forgotten flood tunnel in Oregon with graffiti in a language I didn't recognize but understood. An elevator shaft in a courthouse no longer standing, marked in a blueprint from 1932 with a small X and the phrase, "Interior not permitted." Each site offered no entrance, no room, no door, only nearness, only implication. But I kept going. I couldn't stop. Each location filled in part of something too large to see, too quiet to explain. They weren't clues. They weren't steps. They were acknowledgments. I hadn't chosen the search. I was being reminded. The paper was thin, browned along the folds, nearly translucent at the edges. Found tucked between two unrelated documents in a university archive labeled improperly as floodplain insurance. The fire map dated 1891, hand-drawn, fire-inked lines showing structures long since gone. Most had annotations: barn, stable, mill, post. But one rectangle near the page's corner bore no label. Only a faint marking beside it. Union Rail Platform, decommissioned 1878. It sat on the edge of what used to be a prairie town. The name no longer in use. The coordinates mapped roughly to a place marked now by wheat and dust. No highway touched it. Only a worn-out fence line remained, half swallowed by time. I drove until asphalt gave up and gravel narrowed into silence. The land had no urgency. No need to be seen. Just the slow exhale of wind across flattened gold. I found the outline of the platform in a depression shaped by erosion. Wooden remnants sat half-buried. No sign of rails. No sign of life. Just bones of structure barely holding form. The ground felt uncommitted, as if it hadn't agreed to stay solid. My boots sank with each step. Toward the back of the platform, behind a buckled slab of concrete, something darker interrupted the earth. Not shadow. Not rock. A partial arch choked by sediment, barely enough to crawl through. The smell was wrong. Dry mold mixed with cold metal and something older than either. I didn't hesitate. The shape had already accepted me. The first 10 feet scraped flesh from my knuckles. Stone walls closed close, irregular and worn. The passage dipped, then leveled. Every motion forward felt like permission granted. I never questioned why I fit. Past the entryway, the tunnel expanded. No lights. No markings. Just the faint sound of my breath and the friction of air against surfaces too still. Dust clung to itself in corners. Water stains hung like vines down cracked brick. The silence wasn't emptiness. It felt filled. Not loud. Not oppressive. Just full. The way waiting feels before a word is spoken. Farther in, the ground sloped slightly. A glint of rust ran down an old pipe overhead. Every few meters, fragments of wood jutted from the wall, old support beams or tool racks, long forgotten. My hand brushed one. It flaked without resistance. The skin on my palm tingled where contact lingered. The corridor widened without announcement. Walls bent away without geometry. Ahead, past the reach of shadow, one shape stood exact. No decoration. No signage. Just surface. A door. 10 feet tall. Metal blurred by time. No knob. No hinges. Flush to the frame. Set into the far wall like a final sentence. Every part of me understood it without explanation. This door had not been built. It had remained. I didn't move closer. Not right away. The floor between me and it felt heavier. Not thick. Not soft. Just uncertain. Like every step forward would rewrite something that shouldn't be rewritten. There was no sound. No temperature. No memory. Only the door. And in that moment, I knew I'd reached a place that had always known me. The door didn't open. It accepted. No click. No shift. No resistance. One step forward, and the surface wasn't in front of me anymore. It had retracted without motion, like a curtain made of memory. I didn't cross a threshold. I was simply inside. No lights. No shadows. Still, everything visible. Clear edges, muted textures, a full geometry without source. Nothing cast anything. Yet every object held its outline. Color didn't glow. It revealed itself. The carpet stretched wall to wall, burnt orange as described, not vibrant, not faded, just present. Not new, not worn. Timeless, but not eternal. As if it had waited under every other floor I'd ever stood on. Walls met corners that refused to behave. Angles didn't misalign, they drifted. Not an illusion. I turned my head, and dimensions disagreed. One wall leaned while remaining upright. A ceiling sloped but held flat. Space didn't disorient. It misremembered. The sound had no origin. A hum, not inside my ears, not around them. Behind skin, under bone, it moved like a pulse not my own. Not mechanical. Not organic. Not ambient. Just constant. Not unpleasant. But full. I tried moving to the left. My legs obeyed, but the distance resisted. Like walking across a room that refused to agree with its own size. Every step ended before it should. The far wall remained close. Not shrinking. Not distant. Close. Always. The dimensions stayed exact, but placement bent. Near one corner, weight shifted. My stomach pulled sideways. A subtle distortion of balance. Not dizziness. A tilt without direction. Like standing in a photograph tilted just slightly out of frame. My body didn't argue, but it stopped understanding. I reached out. My hand felt nothing, but my shoulder tensed as if touched. No sensation. Only response. Time had no rhythm. My breath came. My heart moved. But nothing passed. No progression. No sequence. Only now. No beginning to the moment, no lead-up. Just being inside, as if I had always been. No fear. No peace. Only recognition. This wasn't discovery. This wasn't arrival. This was return. At some point, if it can be called a point, I stepped back. The door did not open again. The room ceased without leaving. I was no longer inside, but there was no exit. Just air. Just wind across open space. No corridor behind me. No tunnel. No station. My hands touched grass. Tall. Coarse. Dry near the base. The earth had swallowed what never belonged above it. I turned in every direction. No structure. No trace. Not even disturbed soil. Only wild prairie stretching in every direction like an apology. I had no proof. No mark. No artifact. Only a memory that hadn't waited for permission. The recorder buzzed before I pressed play. Static filled every second of the tape. No breaks. No silence. No background noise. Just that low, inconsistent fuzz like interference from something that shouldn't be near magnetic. I replayed it 3 times. Nothing changed. No voice. No room tone. No sign the machine had ever captured anything but disruption. It had worked fine on the way in. The batteries were fresh. The red light had blinked exactly as it should. Yet the tape was blank in a way that felt intentional. The analog camera was full. 36 exposures. I developed them in my kitchen using the old red light kit I hadn't touched since college. Most frames returned overexposed, washed out to white. A few had fog where structure should have been. Walls without weight. Angles without logic. No shapes recognizable. No corners matched. One image remained. Perfect resolution. Centered. Crisp. The room exactly as it had been. Carpet uncreased. No furniture. No footprints. Door sealed, no handle. Lighting without source, yet clear. The image felt still in a way that photographs rarely do, not frozen, but paused. As if it were waiting to resume. No metadata. No frame number. The negative for that shot didn't exist. Only the print. I tried returning the same way. Every route failed. The prairie had swallowed itself. Roads didn't align with satellite overlays. The fire map no longer matched. GPS dropped out near the coordinates I'd marked. On foot, landmarks drifted. The fence I'd passed through on arrival had collapsed inward. The depression that once marked the platform was gone, flattened, overgrown, indifferent. Even the wind felt wrong. It blew in one direction before noon, reversed by late afternoon. No wildlife. No birdsong. No movement but grass. No color but dull gold and bone gray. The place had been erased with precision. I posted the photo, included the report, dated everything, redacted nothing, described what I saw, what I didn't, what I could no longer prove. No one responded the first 3 days. A few accused it of fabrication. Some called it a liminal art project. One user claimed the colors were digitally altered. Day 7, an email arrived. No subject line. No introduction. Just one sentence. I remember that room. I've never spoken of it. Attached was a drawing. Hand-scanned. Faint pencil lines on yellowed paper. The dimensions matched. So did the door. So did the way the corner didn't quite meet the floor. No signature. No name. No location. Only a timestamp embedded in the scan. From 3 years before I ever began looking. Before I had any reason to ask. Before I even knew there was something to find. It didn't feel like a confirmation. It felt like being seen. The responses came slowly at first. A few comments beneath the image. Some dismissed it. Some questioned lighting inconsistencies. One tried matching it to a set from a forgotten television show. But one simply asked, was there a hum? That was the first real one. A week later, the inbox broke open. Not spam. Not noise. Full accounts, line after line. Paragraphs typed with care. Sketches attached as scan files, napkins, receipts, corners of notebooks, backs of flyers. Some crude, some precise. Some annotated. All the same shape. Same dimensions. Same absence of origin. No one claimed to know where it was. No GPS coordinates ever matched. The more detailed the location, the less likely it could be verified. One man remembered finding the room behind a construction trailer outside Tehran. A woman said she walked into it through the third door on her childhood school's second floor, though the building only had one level. A geologist swore it had appeared between 2 chambers of a collapsed salt mine. No 2 paths repeated. No structure around it ever existed twice. But the room never changed. 10 by 12. Burnt orange carpet. Door with no handle. The weight near the far wall. The hum. Some remembered the smell first. Iron, dust, heat without fire. Others noticed the way sound bent if you spoke aloud. One woman said she had cried in the room without knowing why, not from fear, but from something like homesickness for a place she'd never been. A man described feeling watched. Not threatened, not judged, just observed, like a mirror held up by something that didn't need eyes. Some stayed inside seconds. Others claimed hours. None recalled entering. No one saw the door open. One said it was like waking mid-step. Another described blinking and standing on the carpet. No beginning. Only middle. No exit. Only after. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. One drawing came from a girl in Belgium who had never left her town. Her sketch matched a photo taken in Brazil in 1964, found in a box of undeveloped film. Another came from a retired pilot who sketched the layout from memory using a stylus on an oxygen monitor while recovering from surgery. A boy in Lagos emailed a photo of his notebook margin where the room had been drawn during math class. The door was in the right place. The tilt of the corner matched. Some included no drawing. Only words. descriptions with the same phrasing I had read before I ever knew what to look for. The hum is inside you. Gravity isn't wrong, it's just tired. You were supposed to forget. Some accounts contradicted others in small ways. Placement of the shadow, color, temperature of the light, angle of the ceiling. But the room itself never wavered. What stood out wasn't the detail. It was the ending. Every message closed the same way. Not copied. Not pasted. Worded with minor variations, sometimes misspelled, sometimes hidden in the final line of body text. But always there. You've been here too. You just forgot. It didn't read like a warning. It didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like truth. Not remembered, but waiting. Not mine. Not yours. But ours. Thank you for watching and sticking with me to the end. Now, if you believe humanity deserves a future among the stars, do subscribe now. Only those who'd abandon Earth to its fate will scroll past.